Hi, welcome to Dynamics 365 Shot First. I'm Phil Cameen.
I'm Charlie Rogers. I thought we were going to alternate there as well. I nearly said your name twice.
Well, you could do if you want.
If we've already done it, it'll be fine.
Exactly. Okay. She'll edit it out anyway. It'll be great.
It's just us, natural. That's how it is. You can't get it right every
Absolutely.
time. Which links in to what we wanted to start with. That's why it's probably a good...
It is. We're talking about future-proofing your career, which is very important.
That's it. From ancient...
Thank you.
to new.
To mere junior.
Exactly.
There we go. So straight away, labels, pretty important thing if you're trying to think about your career in terms of future-proofing it. I can say the word future-proofing. It was interesting. We when we talk about this stuff, we put a couple of titles on a board and we kick it around. And I was like, what do I know about future-proofing my career? And you said...
Well, at the end of the day, like Phil's been, and there'll be a lot of you watching, right, that are also in this boat where you're 7 to 15 years. Some people have been doing it
30 years.
Yeah, you're right. So, and I said to Phil, although he doesn't think he has future-proof careers, like somewhat you must have. At some level, you've done a good job, and you're also very senior, right? So you must have done an exceptional job. Not to big up too much, but
Thanks, mate.
Then an exceptional job, somewhat of not even realising you're doing it, but of future-proofing and things like that. As we said, labels are one. Although, labels don't want to touch too much on, but it's important to be able to define what you do in 2 to 3 words, not having to spend 30 minutes explaining 150 different things you've done.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about sort of when I interview folks for jobs, normally a first test is tell me a little bit about your current role. And I might sometimes say a little bit about your current role. And that's really important to try and if they pick up on these cues, because it's a key part of, sort of, if you're going to employ somebody, you've got to make sure they're listening right and they pick up on some of the subtleties. And so someone who starts waffling for ages, like I am now, you'd be like, do I want that person involved? Do I want to work with someone if they can't pick up on these kind of cues?
It's just soft skills at the end of the day, right? Like as a consultant, like we always say, you can dance around and, say you're on a call with a client and you don't 100% know. I mean, already from the offset, I'd say there's an issue. If you've got a meeting and you're not able to prep for it and you don't 100% know what's going to be spoke about, there's already probably something you could have done better instantly. Yeah. But sometimes you do have calls where customers, you'll fix one thing and they go, can I just grab you for this? Instantly, it's like, well, you're inclined to, let's have a look. Let's try and define what the answer you're looking for. And like you say, it's those soft skills that even if you don't 100% know what they're on about, like if a client came to me and said, can we develop this AI? I'm not a developer and I haven't got your experience in AI. So we can have a chat about it.
Have a chat.
Try and understand.
That's it. Because, you're aware that there's, before you even get into the problem itself, understanding the context and things around it. Because a lot of people tend to focus automatically on solutionizing and going, okay, we're going to do this Excel spreadsheet or a Copilot or whatever, right? But actually understanding sort of what they do and all that kind of stuff is really important.
I think it's also really important, like you say, right, where you've also got to understand you're not going to be able to do everything yourself. And a really good part of being a consultant, and the more senior you get especially, and it's probably quite hard for you, delegating, right? Like you'll want to do some stuff, you'll see some stuff come in and you'll be like, that's a cool requirement, I'd love to have a look at what that does. Or I tested that a week ago, or I saw it at a user group and I'd love to, but sometimes you've got to go, I'm a TA, I'm going to give that to a senior or give that to a normal consultant, or that's something a junior could crack on with and get a bit of learning out of. And these are all things that you have to do as part of being a consultant. Like I say, even just from an interview, you can tell, even just from little subtleties, like, is this person going to be, are they good at talking? Are they a dev? Are they a bit more, what's the word when you're not extroverted? Introverted. So, I do it myself.
Yeah. We were talking about future-proofing and stuff, and I was saying one of the things that's most important is showing up, which sounds a bit like that's a kind of a mad thing to say, but...
When you've got a job, who would have thought? Who would
have thought? But there's been plenty of occasions in various firms I've worked at where people just don't show up, or they half-ass the job, and it's like, well, that's a key thing, is to be engaged and to try and be likable, because no one wants to work with them, right?
So it's one policy we've always tried to stick to at this company, right? I mean, if you're on interviews and you're part of the process of bringing people in, it's the no policy we've got, right? And I think a lot of Dynamics companies, when we've gone to events, things like Slovenia and those kind of things, you meet people, and they're all just lovely. Like a lot of these clients,
really
companies,
lovely people.
Everyone I've met is, you meet a couple of people, they're a bit too smashed, but we've all had instances. But like I said, on the whole, everyone is just lovely, and I think that's the same here, right? You can go to anyone with an issue, and it's not my job or find someone else. It's either I'll give you a call in 10 when I'm free, or I'll pick up now, or they'll text you at 6 p.m. and be like, oh, what was it you needed? What was it you needed a hand with, or do you want to chat about this, or are you okay? And sometimes just get a random message of how are you doing, which is always nice, And I think that's part of future-proofing your career, is your network and
building up a network.
That's a big part of it.
Understanding, people, they've gone into, other companies or whatever, and staying in touch with these people. And it's easier and easier than it ever used to be. When I started out in IT, there was no LinkedIn, and you could exchange emails with people, but you wouldn't necessarily always email them. But once things like LinkedIn sort of kicked off, 20 years ago, it's much easier to go, oh, I see that so I worked with 10 years ago is doing this. I wonder if it's interesting. Reach out and get in touch and maintain that network, and that's much easier than it's ever been. So that's really, really important thing to do.
And I think part of that is also just reaching out and trying to learn off of your network. Like there's people like Neil Parkhurst who omni-channel genius.
Yeah.
If you were trying to do an omni-channel implementation, you haven't seen it before, and you can see he's talking at one of these brilliant user groups that Cloud Platform User Group put on. But like every quarter, I believe.
Most of them. And there's evening ones, pretty much. Yeah, it tends to be, and there'll be one probably in your local area. So there's a Manchester. There's the Scottish User Group,
Bristol,
Southwest. Birmingham. Obviously, lots of stuff in London. All sorts involved there.
And I think that's a big part of it. Like you say, showing up not just to work, but to the things you're not expected to always be at. Yeah. Whether it's an event once a year, or a Power Platform User Group, or a webinar, or whatever it may be. I think showing up to those, if you're looking to future proof, if you're maybe coming into the industry from like my angle, or you haven't got much experience, or whatever it may be, turning up to those and showing face at the end of the day, whether you contribute or not is almost irrelevant. It's just showing that is an interest of yours and this thing you're passionate about, and trying to learn, the openness to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I started out in IT, obviously we didn't have things like LinkedIn, so you couldn't sort of basically put up a post and say, hey, I went to a user group and I learned X, Y, and Z. But
back then they're still carving out caves.
That's right. We used to basically, I'd fight off a couple of saber-toothed tigers, and then I'd finally do it. No, there were lots of other ways of doing it at the time, and they're just as good now, right? So, if you have an interest in something, like say, show up to a user group, or try a demo, and then, if your demo kind of works well, you can normally get a little video shot or something like that, and just stick it on there. LinkedIn is really great acting as a, that online CV, right?
Do you think you've become in touch with that more in the last 5 years than you were? So have you been in the industry, 15, 20 years now?
Closer to 30 years. Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got...
Just trying to make you seem younger. I can train this as if you're really old.
I'm really old. Yeah, no, I got the cool trainers. How can he be 50 old? But it's interesting sort of how it's slowly changed, and that the ability to have that big kind of LinkedIn as this online CV is really useful. To put in your ideas and stuff like that. So James over there behind the camera often posts bits and pieces about marketing and stuff like that, and it's great to be able to support him. And also, sometimes he puts stuff in there that obviously I see him a fair bit in the business, but to see his other interests and his ideas.
So it's golden retriever the other day.
Did you?
Yeah. Okay. Is it golden retriever, James? Or it's a golden dog.
You look at another James.
Was that your? Oh, see, I'm getting all kinds of confused.
Hold on, sort of. I'm the old person. I'm supposed to be confused. You're the young person.
It's because I'm trying to absorb too much. That's what we're going with. That's what we're going. Sounds more professional.
You're randomly stalking the wrong James on the Instagram, I think, Charlie. Sorry.
Just can't help it, James. Though. But I think it's one of those things, right? And I think creating friendships with people is vital. Not just, and also we work from home, right? I think LinkedIn and that is the professional Facebook, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. I don't put too much personal stuff on there, but it's important there it's got to represent you to some extent. There's a few bits and pieces you can do. I hadn't realised until probably only about 9 months ago that I didn't have to be Phil Kameen A10F or whatever the name it gives you initially. You can change that, so it's a much more readable URL. So that's things like that. So there is lots of stuff you can do to your LinkedIn to make you a little bit easier to find, which can't hurt always. So.
Yeah, I think also, we were just talking a minute ago about endorsements and recommendations on, through LinkedIn, and that's something that's very easy to do, and very easy to ask for other people to help you with. And, and when a professional like yourself looks at a candidate for an interview, if you've got one with 10 endorsements and you're like, at least that means 10 people in the community, if you recognise those who have endorsed X person, you're like, I know Will Dorrington, or I know Chris Huntingford, or whoever it may be, or Brent Dawson, and if you see those kind of people recommending someone, you're like, they must be somewhat,
it's got to be something about
good at what they do. They're just a really nice person.
It's not always straightforward, is it? In an interview, blowing your own trumpet sometimes is a difficult thing to do, because I wonder if it's a British thing, maybe. To talk yourself down.
We were talking about this before, right? I was like, if I was in an interview, I think I would struggle I find it very uncomfortable bigging myself up to a point where I feel like I come across
right.
You say you're good at so many things, which is the whole point of an interview effectively, is they don't know you, and it's what can you do? What can you do? But saying you can do loads of things, you just feel a bit like...
Yeah, I think it helps to have a little bit of coaching in some of this stuff. To talk to people and get them to do mock interviews and stuff, that kind of stuff with you. Like you say, it is difficult to, you've got to kind of verbalize it in some way. And sometimes it's like you read people's CVs and sometimes you're like, wow, they sound amazing. They do loads of stuff. And then you think, hang on, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. But they've assembled it in the right way, so it comes across as as clear and concise. And I think speaking as well, there's a certain amount of that stuff that certainly when I've worked in the past with agencies and stuff, the best ones are the ones who give you a little bit of coaching, who say, okay, during this interview I'd like you to say this, that and the other, and there's an argument, you're like, what do I need somebody else to tell me what I do? But some people are just better at that sort of, the marketing, the sales, and that's fundamentally what you're doing. So you're a very noisy website.
Is that what your motorcycle sound like before you got the
exhaust fixed? No, that was really noisy. But it's really straightforward, I think, to be able to to reach out to people and go, hey, look, this is what I want to say about myself, and try not to fall back onto, I'm not very good at this, or I'm not very good at that. I think there's other ways of saying it, like, I have got less experience with this area, but I know I can take, the learnings I have from the rest of the platform and apply them to that particular product strength. And that's something, particularly in Power Platform, where we've got, you might have a chunk of, custom build knowledge, but you might not know sales or project operations or field service quite so well. And if you can take those little bits of knowledge and apply them elsewhere, and then build up those patterns and talk about it, then that's all to the good, right?
And relating that to BC, like you say, I've had this where you're not going to be able to know all the modules brilliantly.
No,
like it's not possible. There's too much.
Too much. Yeah.
Same as you, right? You wouldn't expect someone to be able to do everything.
All of them. No, absolutely.
It's just not plausible, right? And like you say, it's just when you're doing it, you've got to try and explain. Like you say, I've had experience with this. I've implemented this. Which is saying you know how to do it without saying you know how to do it. Like if you've implemented service, or you've implemented warehousing or manufacturing or AWS, or you've integrated with task little jet reports or whatever it may be. And then it's like say if you haven't done the finance side of it, or you haven't specialised in the supply chain side of it, like you're not going to know this as well. But as you say, you specialise in certain places, where you'll have functionals. Again, functionals are technical, right? You're going to have people like yourself who enjoy the dev and are better at the dev, and that is what you like delving into and what you can do. And there'll be people that don't like doing that at all, but are very good at also pre-salesy, talking and understanding.
Yeah, and just general problem solving, right? Absolutely, which is, I think, what most people in IT, kind of do. And there's a whole bunch of soft skills and stuff that come along with that, as well as the technical skills. So if you were to sort of wrap it up as maybe the top 3 things you would do to future-proof your career.
I think one we haven't mentioned yet, actually, that I think is essential to future-proof it. Certifications, qualifications, provable knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't like it because...
Yeah, I don't like sitting exams.
Exactly, because a lot of people aren't great at sitting exams or become uncomfortable sitting exams, and you shouldn't push yourself to do something that fundamentally makes you uncomfortable. Because if it's not your bag, it's not your bag.
Yeah.
But, we're better at different things. And also, it's just a memory test. You might be implement something and then fail an exam on it. Because in practice, you know how to do it.
Although from experience from doing the Microsoft exams, generally the ones I've done better at, and I found are the ones that I do kind of day in, day out. I can, sort of the solution architecture one, I found really quite straightforward because it's kind of what I do as a day job. But there were bits of the functional stuff I was like, oh yeah, I haven't done that bit in ages, and so so it does depend on the exam, I think. But yeah.
Well, that's the other issue, right? Is say you're a functional consultant, you might be like, I should be able to do that. But like I said, if you've only done, if you focus and harness your ability on Canvas apps or model-driven apps, for example, and don't do, much of anything else,
then Power BI,
then you're going to struggle to do the exam, right? And it's like, although you're a good functional consultant in those areas, it expects you to know a bit of everything.
Yes,
so and that's not always possible. But I do think qualifications and provable knowledge is a safe hedge on future-proofing a career.
Future-proofing career. I'm gonna go. My number 1 is stay interested, but try not to, try and make sure you've got a life as well.
Balance is hard but key.
Yeah, definitely.
You're very good at that, actually.
Who's?
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
Balance. Yeah, I think it's important to. I think that's something that's maybe got easier with age. Actually, I think it's when you're young. It's much. There's sometimes there's an awful lot of pressure put on you by, the company you work for and things like that, where they're like, oh, you've got to know this and you've got to know that, and you're there thinking, when am I going to do this? And I think as the older you get, the easier it is to say, screw you. I used to work with a guy, and it was like, I work to live, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes some people lose a bit of track of that, and I think it's important to make sure that you do this so you can have friends. You can
relate back to the podcast. You got to check your mirrors sometimes.
Check your mirrors, yeah, absolutely.
It's going to turn into a thing.
Yeah, no, I think we can turn hashtag check your mirrors into a thing, man.
You do. Sometimes you do have to just sit and realise, like you say, I've got kids, or I've got a partner that I love, right?
Yeah.
I don't live and wake up every morning just to work. I do all this so we can enjoy a nice life, and you've got to be able to enjoy that life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what you sitting in a stressful job, doing crazy hours sometimes, and what have you worked up until that point for?
Yeah. What do you gain?
So yours is balance.
Balance. Number 1.
Second one, what will I go for? So I've gone qualifications or like exams. I think second one's tough. I'm switching between 2. I think I'm going to go experience.
Yeah.
I think, which is tough because you're future-proofing it. So we're saying this is more towards, the first half of your career probably, where you're trying to future-proof. So experience is a tough one because necessarily that's not what you've got.
It's difficult to accumulate. It's that age-old thing, isn't it? You want the job in, sort of in C, for example, but you've not done any C implementations. And it's like, okay, but I suppose the thing there is knowing what kind of experience to go for. So if you can know there's a project coming up in your organization, have a little fight for, say, look, I'm really interested in this. I've done the learn stuff here, and you can always get certification, not necessarily exam certifications for that, but you can the learning path stuff, and you can see the points, and you can say to somebody, hey, look, I screenshot. I've done all this. I'm really interested in this. I want to be able to take the qualifications in sort of sales, for example, and so that feeds hopefully into that experience.
So with the experience, I was trying to get behind not just, like say, work experience, but but also, like you said, going to these events, as we mentioned before,
Right.
where that's an experience in
Right.
itself.
Okay.
Which is going to lead me on to my next point after I'll let you have yours. Where, well, like you say, you've got to do these things to show your interest, right? And that's an experience you can put on somewhere like LinkedIn or your personal social media or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And just the knowledge you gain from being at those, where it's just being around people like you, so you'll pick up soft skills and you'll pick up the vocabulary they use and how they frame
words
sentences.
No, absolutely. When you work with really good people, hopefully you do pick up those skills.
That's it. Well, what's your second one then, Phil?
We have a balance to start with. I was going to probably riff off, the experience stuff that you put, but stay. It's kind of riffing off what you got there, really, in terms of being interested and interesting.
So being interesting, I quite like that.
Yeah. So a friend of mine always says, interesting is interested, in terms of a conversation. And sometimes, I don't know, go a level of IT autism, but sometimes it's really easy just to go and talk about yourself. And sometimes I'm like, hang on, Phil, just talk to a whole bunch of the person and not ask them how their day was. And I think that's, sort of, if you can remember to do that, then that's going to help you engage with people, I think.
It's funny you say that, because like you said, going back to my point of being at events and things, sometimes it is hard to stray away from the tech and just try and get to know someone.
Yeah.
It's so easy to go online, but what do you do? What do you do? You do power pages? Tell me about it. What's the different tech? What do you do? What have you done? It's like sometimes you've got to step back and just be like, no, you're having a drink with them. Just sit back and be humans for
for a minute.
And that's sometimes really hard to do, I think, when we call it like the genius in BC, our team, we call it like the genius effect sometimes, where you speak to smart people all the time. So then you struggle to not talk about the tech because you're just constantly used to talking to. So whenever I interact with someone, I work at home. Most of the time, it's about business or about business
or
something in relation to that. So sometimes it's hard when you try and step away from that, and you're at an event and you're just having dinner or having a pint, or you're at a pub, or meeting someone like a family, you're friends with outside of the industry, like you're just friends with them. Sometimes it's hard to step away from. Let's stop talking about this crap for a minute. Let's just how are you? How are your family? How are your kids? Sometimes it's really tough to.
No, I mean, there's always like something you can be doing there. Even it's just like, hey, I like your shirt today. Or those trainers are cool. Or, oh my goodness, did you see this on the news? Or something that's not, work. Hopefully, and because work, I guess work is important, right? You're there 40 hours a week doing something, and you're engaging, and there'll be times I wake up at 6 o'clock and I'll be thinking about a work problem. It's swings and roundabouts. I think it's
because sometimes your brain logs off at 4 p.m. when the sun's out.
When the sun's out,
that happens sometimes. I think sometimes it's good. We I'm not sure how it's been where you've worked previously, but here I've always found, especially the BC team and being managed by someone like Pete, like he's quite an advocate of, like, if it's sunny and you want to have a barbecue with the family and you've finished at 4,
go and do it.
Just finish at 4 and spend some time with your family. Do you know what I mean? Take your kid to football. Go see your, spend
it's
some
more
time.
important, right? Yeah.
Because you'll do more because you're happier. You've enjoyed life more.
Yeah.
So you're more willing to work, and you don't have a resentment for it because it's not stopped you doing anything. It's enabled you to live a good life.
100%.
And, like we do delayed stand-up, so we normally start at 9:15. So it gives people enough time to take the kids to school and get back and have a coffee and
delete all the random emails.
Yeah, so you're not just straight rushed into a work day, because that is actually less productive. Because then you might, by the time you've got a coffee and read your emails and gone, right, let's do something. It's 10 a.m. Whereas if you just start at 9:15 and you've been able to take them to the school and have a coffee and you're more relaxed, you're more able to actually just like, what am I doing today? Let's focus on what I'm doing, not just trying to panic around everything. I think that's a really essential, is like you say. If it is sunny and you want to go have a beer with your wife and
balance,
a glass of wine, comes back to your point there. You've got to just sometimes sacrifice work to have the balance, and sometimes you go, sorry, Tools, I can't. We're gonna have to. You can't go to the to your mum's at 6 p.m. We'll have to go at 6:30 because I've got a meeting till 5:30, whatever it is. It's and that's just, and she'll be like, no worries, because that's just the balance.
Swings and roundabouts, right?
Exactly. So your second point was be interesting.
Be interesting, in order to remain interesting.
You got any advice for being interesting? Do you think it is just that personable?
I think so. I think, yeah, just if I think back on jobs, and I guess, maybe when you've, done a few more jobs, it's, you don't tell, I think on the CV it'll say, I remember, when I started work at EDS, everyone dresses the same, every day sucks, we used to say. But I worked with a great bunch of people, and we did some technologies, but the technologies are all like Stone Age and dead right these days. I remember building like websites and testing them on a Nokia 9000 communicator, which was this lovely flip top thing, and I thought this is technology forever. But when I think back, I think about the people I worked with, and did I like them? Yeah, and that's why I stayed there, right? And that tends to be more often than not, I think, that and if you can kind of keep that in mind and try and meet nice people, and if they're nice, be nice back. It's not difficult, right?
But I think that's also the overlining view of this podcast, right? I don't think it's difficult because you've done it without thinking of it, future-proofing your career, where it is just be nice.
Yeah.
It's just be I think just being a nice human is not going to be my third point, but it is a fourth bonus point of like.
Yeah.
I think that is just a basic. Just be courteous, be nice.
No one wants to. Like you said earlier, no one wants to work with a knob, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be a knob because if people don't like you, it's also just not going to be nice for you to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, again, it's that balance between being able to say no to people sometimes if you've got a personal commitment or you need to do something. You can't just be online every day till 7 p.m. But it's also, sometimes like I've had nights where. I was trying to build flows for a demo that we've got next day, or testing a flow, and I just can't get it to work. And Seb stayed, one of our brilliant senior consultants, stayed on a call till 6:30. On a
he's
Friday.
Got like 8,000 kids as well.
I love Seb.
He's great.
He's brilliant. But it is, right? And he stayed, it's sunny, it was a Friday, and we're on the call at 6:30 because he knows his flows really well, more than I do, being a BC consultant. And he's still helping me, no issues.
Yeah.
It's just like I say, sometimes he's lovely. Again, if he was ever looking for a job and I could help him, future-proofing wise, I'd always...
Oh, yeah.
Not just because he's nice, he is brilliant, but like you said, it's not the you don't go, I've worked with X person and they're really, really knowledgeable. I mean, you do.
Yeah.
But you remember the person, not what they've done.
Person. Yeah.
And if you're like, they'd be a good fit for your company. They'd be like, if you're employing someone and you've known them from a different company, and you're like, they're lovely. Yeah. And they were quite good back then.
Absolutely. You want them on board.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Whereas if you remember, if you're like, that guy's right, you're already at a disadvantage. So it's just, I think being a nice human is a bonus point.
Yeah.
But my third point, before we go back to yours, is I think I'm going to lean off yours as well a bit. Network. I think it's quite an obvious one, and it goes back to what I was just saying. The fourth point, like I said, if you've got a nice network of people you've just got in life in general, I think is the key. Whether it's you've got to have someone for if you're having a personal issue, or if it's your partner or your parents, or colleagues at work or friends at work, whatever it may be. Like you've got to have that that network for whatever it may be, and future people in career is no different. Where
absolutely people you can ask questions of, in either in work and outside of work are really important. People that you can say, hey, look, I had a day or I had a crappy week, and they can offer an opinion, right? And then you can sort of think to yourself, okay, you can either go, no, that's nonsense, or you can say, yeah, there's something in there, and that gives you, time to sort of cogitate and think, okay, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to change things, or whatever you need to do to deal with the problem?
So I think even if sometimes it's just advice, right? Like I come to you quite often, like, I've got this, whether it's a personal problem or a work problem or a query that I don't know. Like, I'll come to you and just be like, Phil,
what do you think?
There's a good chance in the 30 years you've probably come across it before.
Yeah.
It's not an unusual thought to have, or a query, or whatever it is, or an issue. You're going to have had it at some point. What's your advice? What do you think is going to happen? Like, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What's your advice? But you've got to have that network of nice people.
Yeah.
And I think in the industry we're lucky, it's quite easy to.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think, because we're not, none of us are really, we're not curing cancer or anything like that. So I don't think, there are a lot of organizations where I think people get quite stressy and stuff like that. I know in finance, I worked for a bank a long time ago, and there was a lot of real stress monsters and stuff there. But they allowed themselves to get drawn into the whole, the culture of, golden handcuffs, dealing with big amounts of money and putting themselves under strain and stress, and sort of you've got a choice about that. You can do that, but I don't think anybody can keep going at that stuff.
Not sustainably.
Not sustainably, no. I'd like to think the world's a better place. From certainly within our industry, we're a lot better at that than we ever used to be. I think we used to allow it. I think maybe there was more of a culture of it.
But I think it comes back to, again, a previous podcast or maybe a future podcast, depending on
You can say
on
check
the
your
postings. I don't want to get in trouble. No, but it comes back to DevOps, right? Like having structure and being able to say no as a consultant is key, because
So in DevOps, one of the key things, right, is when you're building a sprint, is saying how many developers do I have, and how much time is available to them in the day. And one of the first things I nearly always say to a PM, as a project manager, is, okay, I want you to set it as 6 hours a day. Now I know there's 7.5 hours in a day, but I know damn well that team meetings, other jobs, other project questions and things like that will easily chew into that time. So I know damn well, from the get-go, make sure that you have breathing space. And that's just the start. And then within the week, you might think, well, actually, I know there's, some days, perhaps Friday afternoon, make sure it's a slightly shorter day and all the rest of it. And it's just, and if you can do that as well in your own life as well, realize that you can't, chew all of this stuff all at once.
you're not a machine.
Yeah.
You're going to have a break at some point. And some days you've got to understand, today I've done 8 hours of work.
Yeah.
I'm feeling on a Friday. If you're feeling Friday and you're not feeling well, or whatever it may be, and you're feeling a bit down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today I'm only doing 6 hours work, and that's, as long as it's communicated and understood by the members of the team, so you're not overloading someone else with the burden.
Yeah.
I think it's good to do that. I think you've got, it's good. You've got to sometimes, and as project managers, their job is not only to manage the project, but it's to manage the people.
They make sure the people are okay.
And make sure everyone's okay and everyone's on board. And if the timeline's not out, push it back. And if you can't, communicate that things aren't going to be 100%. What's
100%.
MVP? What needs to be done? And this might be done on time, might not be. Like you say, you try and forecast these things, but it's not always. It's not a straight line of we'll get there doing this. There's always going to be corners and sometimes roundabouts where you're going to turn back on yourself. It's just the joy of being a PM, like I say, architects a lot of times.
Taking care of people, making sure they all, sort of get a good, kind of bite in the pie, as it were, and sort of everyone gets a slice of the pizza. So, otherwise some people are very easily hog big parts of projects. Because you might think, wow, they're really, really good. I'm going to get them to do everything. But you can't pick up your junior team if you don't give them any work to do. Because it's getting stuck in anger. And I don't mean by being angry, but by doing something actively is when you learn the most.
Sometimes it makes you quite angry. To take my word for it. Sometimes I'm looking at it and I'm like, this should be working.
This should be working. Oh, that's IT for you, isn't it?
I've got it, and I'm like, everything, and then you'll get a video and you're like, he's done the exact same thing that I've done, and his works and mine doesn't. And then you call someone in, they're like, oh, you missed a comma or something.
I think a break is also as good as what's the expression? A change is as good as a break. Changing track occasionally is important. So if you're struggling with a problem, don't just keep going at it. Sometimes switch tracks, try something else, put it to one side, make sure put it to bed. And I often find, if I'm coding, I'll often find that if I try and start code at 4:30, it's awful code. Whereas if I just pick it up fresh in the morning, then it can take me like 5 minutes and I'll get much better results. But that's a question of kind of knowing yourself, right? I mean, some people like to work at, sort of midnight to do their code or whatever. And if that works for them, great. So
never do a release on a Friday, Phil.
Never do a release on a Friday. Yeah. And it's interesting, the chat that I did last year at Dynamics Minds, I picked out somebody who said, oh, you're doing a release on a Friday? And he was like, yeah, I do a release on Friday. And I was like, are you a bit crazy? And he was like, no, you can make it work. And they're right, you can make it work. If you're using DevOps and you're using your ALM, everything you've done to your UAT should, in theory, work in your production. But that's the magic word there. in theory, it should work.
Do you want to add that stress to a Friday? Again,
Exactly.
it comes back to balance, right? Like, are you going to overload yourself on a Friday afternoon when you don't want to be thinking about it on the weekend?
Well, that's it. Yeah.
No. Ideally, you don't.
No, exactly. Balance. It's key.
Yeah. And then that's what you've got to think for your team, right? Like, it might be okay if he's in a smaller team. There's only, maybe him.
Yeah, maybe
but if there's 5 of you that are going to be stressed out if it doesn't go well.
Yeah, and they've all got stuff to do right on a Saturday.
You've
Got
to think of everyone else as well on the project, and I think that's a really key thing when you're a consultant is you're building it not for you, you're building it for someone else to support, and that's what you've got to realise. You're not always going to be doing a BAU
on this thing,
on the job. Someone, your support team, you have to pick it up, or if they move and they have a different support, they've got to be able to pick it up. So you've got to build it in a way that's manageable for others. Anyway, we deviated quite.
We did a bunch of but I think in terms of, I think it'd be really easy to say the skills you need for BC and CE focused roles might be, you need to know Power FX, or you need to know JavaScript or whatever.
But it's useless without soft skills.
Yeah, without the soft skills, or acknowledging that it takes time to pick this stuff up and that you do need to put it into practice. And more often than not, that needs other people.
And also, like you said, it's not just the skills. You could be a genius, but if no one knows you, or no one can recommend you, or you've got no valid experience with anyone in that company, then it's going to be a lot harder than someone that
it just gets on.
Someone that that's. This sounds bad, right? Because you're then arguing that someone's ability doesn't matter, but on an interview, you don't know their ability, and that's the point. It's hard to communicate ability on an interview. So future-proofing is more of, be able to prove knowledge and show intent to work and your passion for what's going on, because you can't prove your ability compared to someone else. It's not a game where you've got stats. It's real life, and personability matters. And
that's it. I think passion as well is maybe that's a good another word for like balance, future-proofing. You've got a passion for your job. It doesn't mean that you have to work every day and every night. It just means that you enjoy it, and you enjoy making it go forwards, and that will come across in any kind of job interview. Someone who's got a passion for it. I asked when we were doing a chat last year, I said, how many people put your hand up if you enjoy working on Power Platform? And only half the room put their hands up. And I said, I think I need to talk to half of you, because why are you doing this if you don't enjoy it? Because I think it's important to enjoy it. And I don't mean, like I said, I wake up first thing in the morning and I'm dying to go, because that's not true.
some days you will be.
But some days I'm like, I'm excited to get involved in this. And more often than not, it's not just what you work with, it's all the people you work with as well. They're really important.
So we've got to go to your third point. You've got so far balance, being interesting, and your third and final.
With my third one, I'm sure I was using some kind of buzzword in the last 5 minutes. I'll use whatever that was. We've got a really good social media person over there, Beth, and she will edit in something really clever. So I will just move my mouth.
I don't think that's a good enough. I think everyone's asking more for.
Are they asking? Are they asking more?
What is Phil Kameen?
Passion, then. Passion, my friend. There we go. I'll put in passion. But passion and balance, and trying to be interesting and interested. Take you a long way. Hopefully.
So what do you think mistakes that maybe passionate consultants make when implementing a project?
Yeah.
Can you just give anyone advice? Because future-proofing is also mitigating risk. And things are inevitably going to go wrong sometimes. It's not always going to go well. You can test it, and like you say, in UAT it'll work, dev it'll work. You just put it in live, and suddenly it's broke something else. And it's future-proofing is about taking those precautionary steps to mitigate that risk. And what are 3 mistakes that you think do happen when implementing often that people need to look out for? If they're if you're experienced, these might be obvious. If you're a bit
getting an understanding, a high level understanding of what a system is supposed to do is key.
As in
the requirements for
client.
For a client. So I think sometimes a lot of the time clients don't engage necessarily the right people within a project. They give you somebody who has a very high level understanding but doesn't understand the detail or is not detail focused. And then when you provide them with the detail, you kind of get mushy, oh yeah, that sounds fine type answers. I think ensuring that you have someone who can talk detail.
So if that's not available to you on a client, what would you say a precautionary step you might take is, say, so there's only 5 people they're bringing in on the project and none of them have given you like conclusive, this is what we need it to do.
I think at that point it's a question of, writing down what you've got and then taking it to higher parts of their business. It's surprising how many parts of organizations are kind of scared almost of writing down all of their requirements.
Sometimes I find taking it lower in the business is
finding but getting access to those people is
not always easy. Yeah, that's why I love doing discoveries and things on site, because you'll get like a wishy-washy answer from middle management, and they'll go, yeah, this is what we're meant to be doing, and then you're like, well, I'll go check that later today because I don't want to go and build it based on what you think happens.
Yeah.
And if I go speak to Jeff or Bob or Millie or Lily or whatever their name is
down on
there, and they tell me, that's what we should be doing, but that never works. So we just do this workaround all the time, and it's those things that you need to understand because you don't want them to have to do
those
workarounds.
Yeah.
So that's one. I think for mine, I'd say data is a common fault on every project I've ever worked on.
Data
is. You try and from the outset, you try and get it clean and clarified, and they're always like, yeah, it's coming from another ERP project, it'll be fine. We cleansed it 3 years ago, and then you get to it, hang on. There's always in the wrong format, or there's data and they've not used in years, or
because a lot of companies they want to. I think a lot of organisations try and gather as much data as possible, and it's quantity over quality. That's a real issue that I think a lot of businesses.
That's what we always say. We want it to be as cleansed as possible, because when we do reporting, we want it to be accurate for you. If you're doing a cash flow forecast and you've got data from 8 years ago that you just journaled on because at the time that seemed right.
Yeah.
If it wasn't accurate, then
what's the point?
Then why are we putting it in the system? Like, does something from 8 years ago matter? If in the last 3 years it's become more mainstream, more controlled, or whatever it may be. Like a good example nowadays, especially like TikTok and things, like companies that warehouse little items, that are made on like TikTok and sold on that, right? If 10 years ago they were doing that, their sales wouldn't have been high. But now it's much more mainstream out.
Right.
What's the point of taking, financials from 10 years ago when, for the last 5 years that data's not relevant? Because it's a different industry now, a different market now to what it was 10 years ago. Right, and requirements lawfully you don't need it there. So,
well, that's it. I think in the last 10 years, things like GDPR have come along. So I think you've got to be a lot tighter on data. Customers often fight you and go, I really want that in the system, and you'll be there going, but you don't use it, and they go, but I might use it, and it's like, well, that's fine. We can keep the source of data, and we can always
keep
come
the
back
CSV file. If you need it, we can import it. But
why bring it in there, and then it's there bloating in their system, right? Yeah, so that's obviously a big one.
Have you got another one from you now, Phil?
Requirements. We've had data. The things that people do, big mistakes.
I've got one.
Go for it.
I'll interject. I think implementation-wise, often you might disagree actually. When you're designing the solution, you might have a bias to certain things you want to include because either you know them or they're easier to implement, although it might not directly fit requirements. It might fit requirements loosely.
Yeah.
But it's because you would rather do it than something else. So you might be able to create a website on Shopify and integrate it that way. But you might go, let's do Power Pages and do it this way. Do something along those lines that you know how to do. And you're defining requirements based on what you know how to do and what you want to do, rather than go harder approach, maybe doing this for the requirements. But again, I appreciate, that all comes down to budget and team ability.
Yeah, team ability, resources and things like that really drive a lot of those decisions.
So that's another mistake I feel like could happen if you're an architect, potentially.
Yeah. It's because the thing is with solution architecture, it is so many things to so many people. So, if you go and get a job spec for a solution architect, one will say one thing, one will say another, and you go and look at the Microsoft definition of the solution architect. You have to be so overarching in terms of the requirements, what the user wants, the quality of their data, your team, what your team wants, the kind of skills your team, well, all these kind of things come together, and I don't think there's ever necessarily an ideal way of putting them together.
Yeah, because my prime example and thought is Power Automate versus code. Like, you might think, we'll do the code because I've got 3 developers that month.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly valid answer.
Better. But then another argument is, if you've got a support team that have got to cover it that aren't dev heavy, why aren't you building a flow to do it? Or
absolutely. Probably end up in those kind of circumstances. I'd be thinking, okay, what can I use my devs for? Because you don't want to end up have wasted resource. Maybe it's an opportunity that I can get one of my devs to do one thing, and maybe for him to pick up some functional skills as well, knowing that, like you say, because you build fundamentally for user requirements and then for a support team, in my mind. User requirements are obviously very important because somebody has to sign off on them and pay you for it. But at the end of the day, then once the thing's in day-to-day use, then a support team needs to be able to look at something and instantly know when there's been a problem and where the problem is and how to fix it.
Think any more on the C side? Maybe you're just brilliant, so you don't have...
And never make mistakes.
Modest, I mean.
Modest as well. Yeah, I don't know, actually, in terms of cracking business, that user requirements and we've covered data, and then there's the broad architectural strokes. I can't think of anything now off the top of my head which I think doesn't fit into one of those. They're quite broad categories. Normally there's a high level requirement before someone approaches an organization like Formus, knowing that they want to do something with Power Platform. And I suppose there's an architectural thing, is sometimes it's like, okay, is Power Platform the tool for the job? But I suppose...
So that's the other question I was going to pose to you, actually. Is there ever a time where you read something and you're like, a better system? Yeah. I wouldn't recommend you use Dataverse or Microsoft at all. I think there's, like you say, Sage I wouldn't.
God, no.
PC can do it all.
Yeah, PC, Power Platform, everything.
And friendly can't watch.
But there's normally a tool somewhere, because we don't tend to provide exclusively Power Platform. We have all the Azure stuff as well. There's 101 other tools at my disposal. They all live within the Microsoft universe, as it were.
Stack.
And that's cool, because there's almost nothing in there that isn't available, or an equivalent isn't available anywhere else. One of the jobs I did was, I was on a contract a long time ago where we were working on the EU exit program, and I was working for Microsoft as a contractor. And it was really cool because I showed up on site, and the first day I showed up and they said, this is the guy from Microsoft. There's just a dev there, and I forgot his name. He's a lovely guy anyway. We got on like a house on fire, but the first thing he was like, oh, blah, 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 I've got a problem with a website. And I was thinking, I'm here as a Power Platform guy. Why is he asking me this? Just because I'm a Microsoft guy. And I was like, okay. And I was able to answer his question. That was very lucky. But Microsoft, one of the things they did when they went into this organization was they said, well, you shouldn't be using Power Platform in this way. You should actually have B2C in front of it. And this organization said, no, we don't want to do it that way. And for the 3 months that I was there, up until the end of March, when the EU exit program was supposed to go, they were really struggling to make it work. They were trying to push loads and loads of data straight into the API, and it's not built for that. So Microsoft is saying do it another way, and this organization chose to ignore them and go their own way. Now, I'm sure they probably made it work in the end, but it was eye-opening in terms of Microsoft were very, okay, that's not working, and that's part of let's give them something that will work, and then we'll do the work in order to make System A talk to System B. And I think I take that generally when I go into any role. I'm trying to think about, in broad strokes, what the business need, rather than thinking about it at too much of a technical level. Yeah.
That's important. I mean, for me, that's everything. You think that covers our...
Talked a little bit
for anyone that is watching. We always do a bullet point or two to make sure we try and loop back on topic, because we quite often find ourselves astray from where we began. For me, that covers it all. I think, just to summarise, I think, what did we say? So we said network, balance, it being interesting,
passion,
certifications if possible. Yeah. And I think I'm pretty much broadly between the 5 there. Cover how to future-proof your career. And as we say, it isn't something you have to actively think about, but it's something you should probably, try and implement.
Yeah, in some way. And it need not even necessarily always in your work life, potentially in the real world as well, because they're all skills, hopefully, which Doesn't matter what you do, you know, make sure there's some balance in your life. Make sure you have a certain amount of passion for what you do. Otherwise, you're just going to hate it. Make sure that you like the people you work with, because otherwise you're going to hate the job and you're going to want to leave. And that's no good either. So
well, that wraps it up. I mean, I'm quite keen to...
Yeah, let's go and look at that. I've seen sunshine outside.
I was going to say, talking about balance...
Let's go and get some of that balance.
Try and get as a vitamin D the sun gives you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, look at me. Yeah, something else. I nearly said C.
I'd have agreed with that as well.
Yeah. Someone correct me if we're wrong.
Exactly. But yeah, let's go and get some of that vitamin D.
Thank you for listening.
All right.
We'll
yeah. Thanks everybody. Take care.
Right, bye bye.